have this weird, got it. Okay. So hopefully y'all can see my screen and my participant mute thing isn't bothering too much. Because I can't see what you see, but here we go. So City Nature Challenge 2022 for the Baltimore area will be April 29th through May 2nd. So it's, that's interesting. That's the observation period. So we'll talk more about dates, but basically it's coming up real soon. So what is City Nature Challenge? So that's what we are talking about first. City Nature Challenge is basically a day where or a period of time in which people can find and document plants and animals and all sorts of things around their city. It's a bioblitz style competition. So if any of you participate in one of those before, you go out and you find as much as you can and document it to sort of record what plants and animals are living in the area. And cities are in a competition against each other. They're competing in a couple of different ways of the data that's aggregated. First, most observations, most different kinds of species, as well as most people engaged. So we want to kind of hit that on 3 prongs as a partner of the event. So we're going to talk about a couple of different ways to get involved tonight. So taking part is really easy. Basically, you find wildlife, you take a picture of it, and then you share it on iNaturalist. I'm going to take a pause here for a minute. I know some of you wrote in the chat that you have used iNaturalist before, but if you haven't, and you don't have it on your phone or your iPad, I recommend downloading it now while we go over a few other things so that we can practice it in person tonight in case you have any questions, problem shooting, some of the stuff in the app. So go ahead and take a minute now. If you don't have iNaturalist, look it up in the App Store. It's available for both Android and iPhones and such. So take a moment to do that. If you haven't, the platform is iNaturalist. So how did it get started? So originally in 2016, it was Los Angeles versus San Francisco for the first ever Citizen Science Day. Basically, the Natural History Museum of LA, California Academy of Sciences dreamed up a way to have their cities have like a friendly rivalry going on, a little competition to get people outside and engaged in nature. So there originally was an 8-day competition, about a week long, and over 20,000, I was going to say 12,000, I knew that was wrong. 20,000 observations were made by over 1,000 different people in the area. So they were able to catalog over 1,600 species in different locations, and there was a bunch of new records made in those areas for those using that app. So it really was started really small and local between 2 California towns, and it's now gone global. So since 2016, there's been City Nature Challenge once a year. And so this is 2020 statistics. So in 2020, 244 cities across the globe took place. As you can see, it's sort of spread out over different continents all across the globe. That made it a really big turnout. And I do have some data for 2021 now because of the pandemic. They didn't quite tally things in the same way, but there were over 1 million observations with over 52,000 people participating. So it's a really cool event to see the biodiversity in our area and all the things that can exist even though we live in these urban areas. So a little bit about what it looks like this year. So like I said, there are a couple of different parts. The first part is from the 29th to the 2nd, and that's the take pictures of those wild plants and animals. Those are those initial observations and getting those recorded in the app. Now, the second part is from the 3rd to the 8th, and that's identifying what is found. So scientists, the National Aquarium, the zoo, a bunch of different folks around the state have stepped in and are working together to identify what it is that we've found, to get those research grade suggestions. And we'll talk more about that a little bit. And then on May 9th, those tallies will be totaled of observations completed, and then they'll be reported out of what city did the best. So let's look at, on the map to our left, is looking at what encompasses Baltimore, right? That's kind of a vague term. I know when I am traveling, I often just say I'm from Baltimore if people don't know the area, because it's easy and central. And so really we're talking about Baltimore City, Baltimore County, a bit into Bel Air, and you'll see it kind of gets into Annapolis and a crossover to the eastern part of Maryland, and then, you know, a little bit out, and you'll see there's kind of that border around it. I like to think that of that border as a fence. So it's not that you shouldn't take observations outside of that area, but only those within this border are going to count for our event. And so if you're in that sort of surrounding DC area, but still in Maryland, some of those will count towards DC. So it's just something to note. It's not necessarily bad. You can make observations down there and pop them over, but it just will qualify for usually your next closest city. And the boundaries don't typically overlap. Like if you're in rural PA, you might not fall into Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, if that makes sense, for the challenge itself. But you can use the app and its tools, you know, whenever outside of the challenge, and post whenever you'd like. So that's the basis. So what observations should you guys be making? So basically anything that is a wild plant, animal, fungus, seaweed, bacteria, lichen, sort of anything like that. It can be living or dead as an organism. If you find a dead animal in a place, that's still evidence that it exists in that ecosystem, and therefore you can post it. It can also be evidence of an animal, shells, tracks, scat, feathers, pretty much anything that is evidence, a clear evidence of a particular animal. And then making sure you have good photos of the organism. You can on iNaturalist upload sound if you hear birds and record a sound. You can also upload it without a photo, but those without photos will not count for the challenge. But would count in sort of a biodiversity index in general if you were participating. A question we got asked a lot from folks before, so we'll share, is you cannot upload a picture that you've taken before. So say you have, you know, you were out walking this week and you see, you know, a cool squirrel or something. You can't go ahead and take a picture now and store it and post it in that week, because all of the pictures on your phone are geotagged and dated. And so the app will know that it wasn't taken in that time period. So it is important to make sure you're capturing in the time window we're talking about for it to count for the challenge. And then the other thing is about wild, captive or cultivated things. So this would mean things that exist only because people put them there. So like you wouldn't say, like, I couldn't take a picture of my cat and be like, this is my house cat. It counts as like a thing living in Baltimore City where I live. Because that's not what we're going for here. So just something to remember, but you can put things that are captive or cultivated. So like, say there's, in your neighborhood, there's like a garden and things that people are planting. Technically that would be cultivated. And so you can note that in the app, and we'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But they don't really count for the challenge. It depends how strict those doing the tally are about it. So there's a maybe question mark, because they prefer us to sort of stick to the wild things rather than things that are like potted plants or house animals. So we do want to stick to wild things. I'm going to pause. If anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand or take yourself off mute and ask the question too. I know I'm kind of breezing through things, so I just want to make sure that you have time to ask those if you have any, because there's a lot of info here that maybe you have or haven't seen before. So yeah, observations. And then just a few things about photos. So good photos are key to this challenge. And so we have a couple of different, good rules of thumb. The first being focus on one species in your photo. So if you're taking a photo of an animal on a plant, right, that one picture could be used to post about that plant or that animal. And so you want to make sure when you can to get the species, and so it's isolated, but that's not always easy, right? If you're doing lichen on a tree or something like that, it's not as easy to separate, and in which case that's fine. Just make sure you're identifying it in your post, but making sure we're really clear. If you get this beautiful mountainous scenery of a big meadow, you're encapsulating the trees and the grasses and the animals and all of that, which is very cool and aesthetically pleasing, but not necessarily helping scientists identify what's going on. So a good citizen scientist is focusing on one object per picture. You can also have multiple photos per observation. So if you can get a different angle of the object, or turn it over, or get it in some way that you're helping facilitate the those going in to confirm identities, giving them as much detail as possible. Can you get up close on its scale sets or whatever that would be? So definitely looking at different ways to present that information. And then also, these are some snapshots that I took from iNaturalist today of just ones that were in the queue. And so I wanted to use some of them as some good and bad things. As you can see on the left, that some of them are a little bit blurry. The flower isn't very clear. The mushroom is not too bad. They've pretty much zoomed in. They see this common snapping turtle, which given its size, I think I would stay a bit away from it. But you can see it's in shadow, so it's hard to tell the detail on it, things like that. So getting things in good light, maybe turning on a flash if needed. So that our next tip being discarding of blurry photos. If your organism is moving and you just catch a blur of it, try to wait for it to be still, or if it's really tiny, move closer to it, especially those insects and small plants and things. And getting that detail is pretty important. Like you said, getting close up, anything that you can show detail is helpful, as others are using this to confirm. So that's the overview of City Nature Challenge. It's all about getting citizen scientists involved and out in their community, documenting what's going on, and helping sort of the broader scientist community understand what's going on in the area. Does anyone, before we move into our next session, have any questions about the event in general? Can't necessarily see if anyone has their hands raised, but I'll assume quietness means you're all in understanding, but like I said, feel free to speak up. We'll move on to now a little bit of an introduction to iNaturalist. We'll walk through it a little bit, and then we'll do a demo with what I hope you have downloaded as that.
Okay, so as Kelly mentioned, you're going to need the iNaturalist app or website to participate in City Nature Challenge. Okay, so all you're going to need to participate in iNaturalist, whether it's for City Nature Challenge or just for your own personal enjoyment, is a smartphone or a computer. If you don't have a smartphone, you will have to do an extra step when it comes to uploading pictures. You're going to have to find the location on your own because you don't have that GPS ability on a computer as you would a cell phone. And then to make an observation, you're going to need the specific location, date and time you saw it, and the animal or plant you saw. Okay, so Kelly briefly touched on this earlier, but what if you see a track or a bird's nest or maybe a beaver dam that you're not really sure of? When in doubt, post it and try to be as specific as you possibly can. It might be hard for some tracks and nests to get that down to species level, but as long as you're as specific as you can be, the experts that are going to be reviewing your data might be able to figure it out. Okay, so this comes back to being as specific as possible. iNaturalist is organized by taxonomy. Now, don't worry, you don't need to memorize your taxonomy, but it definitely helps to understand a basic gist of it. So the best you can be is getting it down to genus and species level, which is as specific as you can be. But if you're out in the woods and you see something and you can only get it down to, say, phylum or class, that's okay too. The experts might be able to help you. So for example, if you're hiking in the woods, you find an insect that you know is a beetle, you would put down that it's in Coleoptera, which is the order of beetles, as opposed to insects. Oh, one moment. So you would do that instead because that's as specific as you personally can get. You don't want to misidentify it because that could be very, very bad for science, and we'll get into that soon too. Okay, so all of the observations recorded in iNaturalist go into a global database. This database can be accessed by scientists all over the world, but it's really useful in your local area. Once it's in there, it can be used to help make management plans. So say you have a park and you find this invasive species in it and people are tracking it and it's spreading throughout the park, then you can decide how you want to handle it. Going along with invasive species, we've all heard about the spotted lanternfly lately. So reporting it through iNaturalist can kind of help scientists see where it's spreading to. You can see the map on the bottom is where it's supposed to spread to, but hasn't yet. So knowing can really help people make decisions as to what to do to protect their trees. It can help in changing migration patterns due to climate change. We've all heard about climate change in the news, so having this data on hand really lets people see what habitats aren't being used anymore as stopovers and what habitats might still be possible. It also lets you detect rare species. So if something new pops up in an area it hasn't before, you can see kind of why. So that's the main reason you should definitely post on iNaturalist, especially during City Nature Challenge, but all the time, really. Your simple action can really benefit the greater good.
All right. So up next, how to make an observation. So this is where your handy dandy app will come in handy. Basically, we're going to walk through a little bit about what it looks like to make an observation on the app of iNaturalist itself. So what I've done is I've taken a screen recording because it's really hard to share a phone on Zoom to walk through what that looks like in real time. And I'll pause it a little bit along the way to make sure you can follow along at home. You can choose any picture for now as a practice and then just delete it later. You will need to sign into your account in order to make a post on iNaturalist. You do have to have a login, but it's free, pretty easy. So I'm signed in as me. I've done a few observations over the years, have not apparently done any recently, and you'll see a lot of mine are old. But so basically when you go in, it looks like this. I'm going to pause it. So you'll get prompted. So like I said, you can add it with no photo. You can use your camera and upload it live. You can also use your photo library or record a sound. So those are all the options you have. And so I'll go in and I clicked based on my photo albums. And so I went in And I picked a cool picture for demos purposes of an animal easily identifiable, a giraffe that I saw at the Philadelphia Zoo. So I clicked on it. It's creating the observation, and I'm going to pause here for a second. Oops. It's actually, hold on. So when you go in, you can start to type in an animal. You'll see, like, I started giraffes, and there's the family of giraffes is listed in there. So I went ahead and clicked on that, which should bring us back to our next screen. Okay, so this is the one I wanted to pause on for a second. You'll see in here that it does automatically list the date and time. So you'll see that I took this picture on 9/11/2020, just an easy picture on my phone to use. It is already stamped at the longitude and latitude that you took it at. If your phone isn't set to automatically geotag your pictures, you might need to enter that manually. So if you know where you are, you can sort of zoom in and it'll help you figure that out, but just know that. The next thing is geo privacy. You'll see below that. That's something to think about if the plant or animal or whatever isn't in a place where people shouldn't be going to find it. So say it's on private land, or you don't want people to know where you've been for whatever reason. If you click in geo privacy, you can change the settings on that so that people see a more general vicinity. Think about Facebook Marketplace, right? It doesn't tell you where things are pinpointed, it sort of gives you that like bubble. And that way it'll sort of obscure that for folks so they don't go into places they shouldn't, or if you're worried about your identification, it's the public zoo, so I don't really care if people know I was there. So the next thing up here is captive or cultivated. So in this case, yes, they were captive. This elephant was captive, so I went and hit that button. And then I selected yes, because I want to let folks know that. And then you'll see at the bottom, there is a thing called projects. So you can go in and tag City Nature Challenge, but any posts made during that window of observation will be included in the final count. So you don't necessarily have to tag the project, but if you're doing, say, a bioblitz with Sarah later this year with Natural History Museum, then you would want to make sure that you're including that project so it's counted in your tallies for whatever that project is. So something to think about, but really the key is just location, date, and a picture. And then you're obviously your best guess. And if you don't know, you can type in unknown and other folks will help you identify that. And the app does have an algorithm where it does show you uses, that all that data the good internet's got these days and algorithms to show you what it thinks it may be. And a lot of people then on iNaturalist are guessing based on, what is the closest match, which is, what scientists do. So that's where those confirmations come in to get it like a research grade, is like, are other people agreeing that they see what you see? So it's important that if you are agreeing, that you're not just like, oh yeah, the algorithm's probably right, because we want the algorithm to get better. So making sure that you do know what you're talking about before you confirm someone else's ID. So there's that. And then I just hit share, super easy. And then it'll take a minute to sync up. And then it'll go ahead and post that to the page. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Like it says, seems on mine, it did take a couple of seconds, so then it's in. I've made a total of 8 observations total. So I'm not using the app nearly as much to post about it as I am just to identify things on my own. So this is a good reminder to be using the app and recording it so that others can learn from my citizen science. So before we move to the next phase, does anyone have any questions about how to post on iNaturalist? It seemed like going into this, a few people had posted before, but if you haven't, definitely speak up and ask. We will be hosting an event during that time period in which my lovely self will be around to help folks problem solve in real time with the app. So, but definitely play around with it. I think it's pretty intuitive as far as the apps go. But like I said, if you do end up with questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or take yourself off mute. But that's it for the recording of the observations. Just gonna play it again. Okay, so next up, Sarah.
Yes. So a little bit of background. Natural History Society of Maryland has asked to be an expert reviewer for the City Nature Challenge. So in order to do that, you're going to need to be on iNaturalist, and you'll have to join the project City Nature Challenge 2022 Baltimore. I'll show you where to find projects on the app soon. And these are just written instructions if you want to take a picture of it, if you're not sure how to do a review. If not, we're going to walk through a video next and you'll see exactly what buttons to push.
Ready for your video, Sarah?
Yes, I'm ready.
Perfect. Here we are.
Okay, so if you don't mind pausing it as we go along, Kelly.
Yes.
As you can see, I use iNaturalist a lot. No shame in that. But this is the screen that'll come up when you log into iNaturalist from your smartphone. So you're going to hit that lower right-hand bottom projects that looks like a little briefcase. And that'll pull up all of the projects you personally have joined or are a part of. So as you can see, I have joined City Nature Challenge Baltimore area, but because it hasn't happened yet, there are no observations in there. So we're going to click on Banneker bioblitz just to run through an example. It's getting there.
There we go.
Okay, so once you do that and it finally loads, it will pull up the page and you can scroll down and see all of the observations. The top will show you how many observations versus how many species. You can click on a specific observation, look at the pictures, and kind of once you do that, then you get into the part that we need help with, the review portion. You'll be able to click on, so you click on the same area that you would to make the observation. So you click where the species is listed. Right under, you'll see those three little dots in the bubble for the comment section. And once the video catches up to what I'm saying. Okay, so now you'll see, once you click on that, you can see what everyone said. You can see I chimed in. So you're going to go down and you're going to hit suggest ID. And that will pull up what the algorithm has. But if I looked at the spider, I knew what it was. I clicked what it was. If you need more information, you hit the little eye and it takes you to all the pictures and shows you the map and species information. So I made the choice that orb weaver is what it was. But if I didn't know, I would have put orb weaver or even just spider in there. Does that make sense? Just keeping it to what you know it is, to what it appears to be, so you don't mess it up. Okay.
Perfect. So it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, we are asking that if folks are making IDs, that they are doing that with some set of knowledge. So, right, so we are inviting folks that are curators or naturalists or people that have background knowledge on these topics to help us make those IDs, right? The aquarium staff can only do so much. And so we're doing our best to help them out with our knowledgeable group here at NHSM. And so here we are making confirmations. So how do you participate in City Nature Challenge? You may be asking yourself. So first, spread the word about the event. Let your friends know. Maybe invite some friends out for a walk in a nearby park. You know, let others know that they can be participating. When I first was asked to join through work, I had no idea that this event was going on until someone was like, make an observation for us. I think the reason my count's so low, Sarah, is that I used to use it a lot on my work iPad under a different account. So this is, you know, my personal endeavors here. But anyway, make those observations and identify the best you can for yourself. The more people can put in that input on the get-go of making those identifications, it does make it easier for folks to follow behind and confirm what sort of, you know, spider, squirrel, whatever they think it is. And then participate in an event across the city. So this is, like I said, a citywide event or a Baltimore-wide event. And so we do, there'll be events taking place all over with different, like I said, with different folks, the aquarium, Mason Cove. I mean, God, the list is long and wide. And I put down there at the bottom, the aquarium webpage does have a listing of all the other events in the area. So if you go to aqua.org, which is their webpage, and type in City Nature Challenge, the full link is listed there, but you can, it's pretty easy to find on their website. They do have a running list of different things that are happening around the area that are put on by partners like us in the aquarium. So there is a wide swath of things that you can participate in. Say you're busy the day we're doing it, you want to do it with other folks to get outside and have a little fun and be social. That's a good way to do it. You can also join our observation event. Like I said, that will be posted on our website. Just waiting on a confirmation from the park that we can in fact host the event there. But that'll be up real soon, hopefully by Monday. And then the next part is our review rally. Sarah, do you want to share about that?
Yes, I can definitely share about that. So it will be on Friday, May 6th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's going to be very laid back. We will provide all the field guides you need to help make your observation. You'll see when you sign up for this review rally on our website that we're asking what specialty you have to kind of group people, like-minded, like background people together. And we're going to have a friendly competition with it to see how many species each group can identify by the end of that. Now, the goal of this isn't just to say, yeah, this is what that species is. We're going to make research grade observations. So there, any observation that has a photo, date and time, location, but also needs 2 out of 3 reviewer consensus. So the majority has to agree on that species identity. The orb weaver spider I showed you had that majority consensus. So it is considered research grade. Does that make sense? I'm going to assume silence is a yes, but if not, we can talk about it more later. So go ahead and sign up. That is up on our website now.
And you can be doing, like I said, if you don't have time to come to this event, if you do have a specialty and you do feel confident in your observations, you can feel free to do those on your own. We just don't tend to have people do them on their own, so that, you know, being together does tend to be easier, right? If you're like, I'm pretty sure it's this, you guys can debate in person and then put in real time a more accurate ID up there. We used to do them at my last job. We would get together and it'd be a little social event, but it also sort of helped us make those those confirmations in a confident way, because, you know, within the room we were getting our own consensus. So not necessary to do those on your own, and you can be making those reviews at any time. So if you're a frequent user of iNaturalist already, and you have free time on your hands and want to help, you know, the citizen science in the area, you can always feel free to help confirm IDs of different animals and species in the area. I know I had a fish that I posted one time that we caught in the Potomac that I was having trouble identifying between a couple of different things. And it was really cool to see other fishermen in the area and scientists that we work with help me identify that. So it was really nice. So at any time you can be doing these observations and identifications as well. This is just kind of a little bit to showcase the app and get people involved. And I think it's a helpful tool. We are sort of nearing the end of our presentation, so please get your good questions out if you have any. Like I said, Sarah and I use this event pretty regularly. It helps ID in the field in real time. You can use it without, like you can scan an object and sometimes it'll give you suggestions, but it is sort of internet dependent. So be forewarned. But it's a good app to have in your pocket. Well, we're thrilled that everybody came out tonight, and I hope that if you do have questions, you'll ask them. And then if not, I hope you get to participate sometime in the next couple of weeks. This event is held yearly, sometime in the end of April, sometimes in the beginning of April. It's somewhere around this time period every year. So it does depend on, you know, whenever it's put together. But like I said, it has been going on since 2016. So there'll be a chance to use this knowledge, hopefully again next year. It'll continue on. Seems like a very popular thing, especially now as more countries are participating. It was really interesting to me that in 2019, South Africa actually had the most recorded species in one city, which was really cool to me, and specifically in Cape Town. So it is pretty cool to see that other folks are also engaging in this space. I always find that enjoyable to see what other things people are finding around the world.
Do you want to? Yeah. Do you want to stop sharing, Kelly? We do have some questions.
Yay! I will. Let me do that.
Okay, so the first one that I see is, what are the dates again?
Yes, I can go back to that. So observations are made. If I could find my own slide about it. I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. So the picture taking part, so it's April 29th to May 2nd, over that weekend, is the taking pictures time. And then that calendar week through the 8th is for observations. And it'll close out on the 8th. So you can start April 29th is a Friday. You can start in the wee morning hours of Friday morning all the way through the 2nd, which is Monday, through the evening, that whole window of time. So yeah. So, and that, like I said, if you end up with more questions, iNaturalist is a really good and comprehensive page. And so a City Nature Challenge does as well. And I can drop those links in the chat or put them up. I'll put them up in our events and post about City Nature Challenge, but they do have some really good things. If you end up with a question, they have some cool frequently asked questions.
Then we have another question saying, I always use the what did you see and then review the suggestions to make a choice. Is that okay for the challenge? The answer would be yes, that is perfectly okay. You don't have to magically know what the species is, as long as you're reviewing it and taking into account what it's giving you. That's the algorithm. That what did you see is the algorithm going into effect, showing you things that look similar and things that have also been reported nearby. So the only time that would be a problem is if it's a new invasive species or a rare species that hasn't been seen nearby or looks weird for whatever reason, but it's totally okay to use.
And to be fair, in my former job, I was doing this with students as young as fourth grade, using the app for our bioblitzes. So I would say it's super user friendly. And if you can't ID it, someone else around is going to ID it. So if you've taken a good photo, it'll help others ID it. So if you're not sure, but you want, points up on the board for our city, feel free to just put it in. You can say unknown. That's totally fair. We want to make this as accessible to a broad array of people as possible. We just at NHSM are part of the folks that are also doing identifications. So that's sort of where that comes from. But yeah, using the what you see is totally fine. Anyone else have any questions?
Kelly, I have a question.
Sure.
This is Dave Webb. So a lot of my observations that I put into iNaturalist are from private property.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm constantly having to set my the geo privacy to private.
Yes.
And I will get feedback from people saying, can you be more specific about the location? So what I don't know, and I'm typically an online user, not the app, not the mobile app. How large of an area do people see associated with your observation when you make that geo-privacy private? Is it USGS quad? Is it the county?
That's
is it just some circle?
Great idea. Let me look for a second and let you know.
I sometimes wonder why people need to know the specific location, because these are sometimes things that I would consider fairly mundane. They're not super rare that collectors might go for.
Correct. It's more, I think it's about, so there's 3 levels of privacy when you set that up. The first level is open, which will give you the exact GPS coordinates. Right. There's a level called obscure that'll do what I was talking about, make that bubble around you to give you that general area. It'll say, like, for example, I live in the city. So if I'm taking a picture at Patterson Park, it would sort of give you the gist that it's in Baltimore City. When it's listed as private, it doesn't tag anything.
Nothing
at
shows
all.
up. Okay,
Nothing
so I can understand why some people want to know, because the location can be helpful for making an identification.
Yes, exactly.
So what do you suggest? To use obscure?
Yeah, I would use obscure. It's that middle ground where it gives people that sort of central area.
Okay.
Down to that geo grid that you're talking about. It does sort of present that without saying this is in this person's yard.
Okay, but you don't know what radius circle, say, we might be talking about.
I don't off the top of my head. It's something I can look up.
I use the obscure option a lot because a lot of my pictures are on private property. It definitely is better, and people can usually make a suggestion from there. But if you're dealing with anything that's a sensitive species, rare, threatened, and endangered, private might be better.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is that Sarah?
Oh, Sarah. Yeah.
Sarah. Okay, thanks. That makes it much clearer to me now.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. I had been doing it for work in public locations, so I've never really used the privacy setting until recently. But it's finding that middle ground between letting us know where the species are. If you're posting it, right, they exist, but if you can narrow that down in some way. But yeah, obscured, Laura is even agreeing that obscured is better. It's that middle ground between totally transparent and nothing at all.
Okay, and that'll be fine for what I do.
Yeah.
Probably say 3/4 of my work is on private property.
Yeah, which makes total sense. The cool thing with City Nature Challenge is, if you have a cool vine that's, growing out of the brick, out your house or whatever, like, you can be doing that even on your own property and showing off something you didn't plant, but it's just growing there. So yeah, you don't necessarily want to like flag your house or, I find an endangered animal, you don't want to put it out there so that people might go hunt it. So
great. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
We do have one. It's so I can start uploading now. It just won't be included in the challenge. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. I have been using iNaturalist for years, for a long time, over many different states, but I've never participated in City Nature Challenge before. So you
Yeah.
use
So
it
yeah,
whenever.
all the time. It's a good tool, but yeah, the challenge is just specifically in this window of time, but you can post anytime. I gotta go take down that giraffe later today. I was practicing with for you all because it's a terrible like does not qualify really. But yeah, any last thoughts before we send you all to your evening? All right, well, it's been a pleasure to see everybody come out. Feel free to email if you have questions. Like I said, their website does have good information. iNaturalist, if you do have more questions about exactly what obscured privacy settings mean, I'm sure it's listed on their website. So I'm gonna look it up and I'll try to email it out to y'all. But good luck and happy adventuring.